everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 58 in the series. This one is all about the Tea Room Pullover and saying no, so we'll get to that in a few minutes. Hello everybody, it's so nice to see you. If you're coming back, welcome back. And thank you so much for all the kind messages after the last episode about the farm and your questions, and I promise I'll get back to them. It's been a little bit hectic around here. There was a Montreal trip, there was a trip to Ithaca for soccer camp. Now I'm single parenting for the weekend with 2 dogs and a teenager, and so you can imagine it's been a little bit crazy. But I looked through your messages when I was doing the giveaway sort, and I'm so excited to respond to all of you and talk to you and chatter up about farm and knitting and all that kind of good stuff. So hang in there and I'll get back to you. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. This is generally a cast about garment design, garment modification, lots of knitting, DIY, and some spinning. I am a professor at the University of Illinois, and I can be found just about everywhere as Knitting the Stash, on Ravelry and YouTube, obviously, on Instagram, and on the blog, which is knittingthestash.wordpress.com. So, welcome to everybody. I will talk about the farm a little bit at the end of the episode in case you're interested, so stick around for that after the giveaway. What else are we going to do today? We're going to do this FO, which is the Tea Room Pullover by Albina of LB Handknits. And we're gonna do a new book in our Rare and Hard to Find series because, ta-da, I was able to unpack my yarn room. Not sure when that happened. I think it was like midnight, 2 or 3 nights in a row. But Spencer helped me build my shelves, my stash is out of the weeds, and I was able to put my books out again. And it needs some serious reorganizing, but I have access. So in a future episode, I will try to get in there and get you guys a look around. As you can tell, I'm outside because inside has not been so good light-wise and background-wise since we've moved. Our house has these eaves, and so the sunlight doesn't come in quite as directly as it did in the other house. So I'm trying to figure out lighting, and then background, you know, boxes, empty walls, random furniture, not so good. So I'm outside, and I'm hoping you can hear me, but since it's been such a crazy weekend, I'm gonna roll with it. The thunderstorms are coming in, and I think my teenager is about to wake up, so even if it comes out funny, we're gonna roll with it this time, right, people? We can do this. We've done this before. So I have a book for you in our Rare and Hard to Find series, and what else do I have? The giveaway and a trip to Montreal. I went to Espace Tricot, the knit shop there. I'll talk to you about that a little bit. And of course, saying no, which is maybe where we'll begin. I was just, one of the other reasons things have been hectic is that I was recently offered a new title at work, and in the process of being offered that title, interviewing for it, I had to think a lot about what I wanted to do with my life in the next 2 to 5 years, 2 to 7 years, and ultimately I decided to say no. And that's hard. It's hard to say no. I am one of those people that generally doesn't say no, and I think that's gotten me into some trouble in my life because I take on too much, and you guys who have watched this podcast have often said, how do you do it all? Well, I am learning to not do it all, which is a new experience for me. So I said no. It's the right decision for me at the moment, family-wise and career-wise, but it was very hard, and so that's been taking up a lot of my thought space. And it was actually, I've got some little June bugs running around here. It was actually a lovely kind of excuse to think and knit a lot. So I used knitting this sweater as time to try to meditate on what I actually wanted to do in life. So it can be done. You can say no. It's very difficult, and I'm curious what the potential repercussions of it all will be. But I'm proud of myself for making a choice, and it was a choice that I made. Sure, I consulted a lot of people. I talked to Spencer, I talked to Zach, I talked to lots of colleagues, but it was ultimately my choice, and we'll see. I might change my mind in a couple years and go out for it again, but you never know. There'll be other things in life, but it is possible to say no. And for those of you who always ask me, like, how do I get it all done, including colorwork sweaters and whatnot, I don't, and I'm learning to say no more often. So maybe that'll be some inspiration to someone out there who's thinking about making some big choices too. So with that said, let me jump into this beauty over here. As I said, this is the Tea Room Pullover by Albina of LB Handknits, and it is her brand new pattern. It is out. You can get it on Ravelry. There's a discount. And I'll put the discount code here on the screen so that if you want to get a copy of this pattern, you can go and get 20% off. And her prices are always incredibly reasonable anyway, and her patterns are always really beautiful, so I'd encourage you to check it out. Level-wise, I'd say it's like an intermediate kind of knit. If you've never done all over color work, you're probably better off going with maybe a little bit of a simpler pattern, just because there are no rest rows, and while you're only using 2 colors, the pattern does shift every single line. So you want to be comfortable and competent like reading charts and feel comfortable doing your color work. I do mine two-handed, so I do continental on the one side and English on the other as I'm doing color work. So I do my dominant colors in my right hand with my English knitting, and my non-dominant colors in my left hand where I'm doing a continental. And it's been fun to learn continental. As I said, I think last time when I was talking about this sweater, I started with some color work on some smaller projects, blankets, things like that, and then I did the Leland Aw. I've been told that it's Leland Aw, not Leland Ow sweater, which is color work, but it has a lot of rest rows and it's a little bit less complex than this. So I would recommend doing that kind of stuff first, just to get your muscles trained up, and then jump right in, because this is a beautiful sweater. It's really fun, totally engaging to knit, because you are changing at every line of the pattern on the chart, so you're never bored. It's really great that way. So what should I tell you about this guy? It was a test knit, so I didn't do too many modifications. I did need to go up a couple of needle sizes because I'm a very tight knitter, and I did not swatch for this sweater. Oh my god. I know, right? I tried to swatch, but it was in the middle of moving and the whole job thing that was happening and 10 other things, writing a paper for Montreal. And so I gave up on the swatching, and I said I've knit a lot of Albina's patterns. I think I've knit 5 or 6 of her sweaters now, so I kind of know tension-wise what I need to do to match up with what she does. So I just went for it. I went up a couple needle sizes for the main body, and then up 2 sizes for the main body, 1 size for the ribbing, and then this ribbing I stayed pretty small with. This ribbing and this ribbing are the same gauge, this ribbing is different gauge, and then this is a different gauge. So, a little bit complicated. And I showed you last time the inside of the sleeves, but I'll show you, I'm keeping this modest here. I'll show you the inside of the color work here with all the floats, which I was very thankful, because I've practiced enough. They ended up laying perfectly flat, and there's no puckering in the color work, which is something that you'd want to worry about or think about if you're doing an all-over color work sweater. Now I will tell you, I never thought I would do an all-over colorwork sweater. I admired the ones that Kate Davies has some beautiful ones, Marie Wallen has some beautiful ones, Farrell Design. I mean, there's some beautiful stuff out there, and I just never saw myself as someone who was gonna really engage in color work. But I loved this, and I actually kind of want to just keep up my muscle memory and do some more color work, just to keep it all rolling. I luckily had Debbie, who's one of my knitting spinning buddies, as a little bit of a guide on the way through this. So I would periodically bring the sweater in, and she's an expert at color work, and we'd talk about the floats, and she'd check my tension, and she'd say, no, I think it's going okay, you're gonna be all right. And when I washed it and blocked it, it just came out really nice and smooth and beautiful. So thank you, Debbie, for your help and reassurance along the way. So because it's an all over colorwork pattern, there's not body shaping, so it's a very straight pattern, which I think is fine, and it suits the sweater really well. It's intended to be a kind of cropped, a little more boxy sweater, but I elongated mine because I just like to have longer sweaters, and I still think it's a little bit short, but it is a cropped sweater, so I didn't want to go too far from the brief that Albina gave me with this test knit. It's supposed to be, I think, 12.5 inches from armpit to hem. I went with 14. I usually would go with 15, but because it's a cropped sweater, I wanted to keep it a little short. Sleeves are 3/4 length. Mine ended up coming out almost like wrist level length. So not quite 3/4, but a little bit longer, and I kind of like it that way, because if I'm going to wear a sweater in the winter and want to be warm, that's kind of what I want. So those are the two modifications I really did for this sweater. Unlike most of the other sweaters that I knit, this one does not have short rows in the back to lift up the back. So if you, depending on how you sit with your shoulders and how you wear sweaters and you know, just how your body works. Some people tend to like hunch over a little more, some people like sit up really straight, some people have different curvatures of spines and shoulders and things. Keep that in mind for a sweater like this because it doesn't have the short rows that are going to lift up the back. What it does have is this really interesting neckline, and I will kind of bring it in over here so you can see it. So it has an envelope neck. So the back starts here about halfway across the sleeve and runs across to the other sleeve, and it is just knit back and forth, knits and purls, ribbing, and you knit it as a kind of flap, and then in the front you have a similar flap that's also started at the same places around the shoulders, but it's a lot shorter. So this flap on the back is I think 2.5 inches, whereas this flap on the front is about 1.25 inches. And what that means is that it does sit, the sweater does sit higher in the back than it does in the front. And I was really pleasantly surprised at the way that the sweater fit on me. I'm trying to put the little mannequin back. The dogs do not like the mannequin. Millie discovered it in the sunroom and she just started barking like crazy. But we introduced her to it, and now she's friends with it. It doesn't have a name, sorry. If anybody has any suggestions, let me know. Okay, so necklines. So this neckline is a little bit lower in the front than the back, and it does sit really nicely on me. So I'll put some pictures in here. I dragged my poor teenager outside last night in the fading evening light and begged him to take some photographs of the sweater. So we have some photos of me wearing it, and I'll put those in here so that you can see what it looks like. But it ended up sitting really beautifully and not riding up too much at all in the front, which is what I would be concerned about, but it's totally great. Sweater is yoked up raglan decreases. So you knit your body, you knit your sleeves, and you put it all together and you do these beautiful raglan decreases in your contrast color. And that's one thing that people have said to me as they've seen me knitting this, that they really appreciate about this design, is that although the body has a lot going on, it's kind of visually a little bit busy, the nice blocks of solid color in the hem and the cuffs and the neck and the raglan decrease lines really make it pop and kind of like hold the whole thing together. I think it's like a piece of art, and I know I knit it and I know Albina designed it, but I absolutely think it's gorgeous, and I just kind of want to stare at it. I go and I hang it up in my yarn room or in the house and just look at it. When I put it on, it fits incredibly well, and it's really, really warm because as you'd imagine, just like a cabled pattern, you have all this extra yarn all over your sweater from your arms to your torso, and so it really is a warm sweater. What else would I say about it? I would say what Albina told me, which is if you're gonna knit it probably a size up from what you're used to, because colorwork doesn't stretch. It doesn't have quite the elasticity of other knitting techniques. So, you know, it has some stretch, but it's not the same kind of stretch as you might be used to. So if you knit a size up, they're arguing over toys. Hang on one second. Lady, Millie, it's enough. Thank you. I'll give you a little picture of them in the grass behind me, looking absolutely adorable, but just barking at one another. The life of a knitter with dogs, right? So knit a size up, because you'll want to have a little bit of extra body room in there, because the colorwork won't give you as much flexibility. So it's a totally awesome sweater, and I would highly recommend it. And like I said, Albina's offering a discount code right now, which I will put on the screen again here if you're interested in picking it up. And if you have any questions about it, I know Albina is online and able to answer questions, but I'd also be happy to answer questions about my experience with it. So let me know. Again, this is the Tea Room Pullover by Albina of LB Handknits, and it is a gorgeous sweater. So moving on to segment number 2. How about that? Let's try that. I have our rare and hard to find book, and this one is the Faroese Knitting Patterns Knitted Shawls, which is the English accompaniment to the book that's in Faroese. And I am not going to try to pronounce it because I will butcher it, but I will put it up here on the screen. This is the name of the original text, And this book is kind of like a translated accompaniment for that text. It's all about shawls that are to knit in the like Faroese tradition, and the book was originally published in Faroese by the Faroese Home Industries Council back in 1983. And I have a copy of it because thankfully our guildmates often have sales of one kind or another, and I picked this one up at one of those sales. And in it is this great, someone must have given her originally a translation of the original books. This is a typed up translation of some of the original introductory materials from the book that's in Faroese, and one of them on the front page is the shawl, but then on the third page we have an editor's translation of the introduction. And I know this because I've read the introduction in this guy, and it is a very similar text. So she had someone translate part of that book for her, it looks like before she was able to get a hold of this English copy. So if you're interested in knitting history, as I am, and in place-specific knitting traditions, this is an excellent, really cool book. And one of the reasons I love doing this segment with you guys is that it gets me to pull books off my shelves and actually really give them a good look and think about where they're from and read through them and kind of get a sense of them, and it's really fun. So this book has a number of shawls in it, about 20 shawls, about 20 different shawls, and they all have these really great names, mostly named after either the women who own them, because a lot of these patterns are derived from the shawls themselves, or I think they might be names of places as well, but most of them look like women's names, so I think these are the women who own the shawls. And it's this accompaniment, which you can pick up on Amazon. It's expensive. This paperback I think it runs about $40, and the original hard copy that it's meant to accompany runs about $70, and I haven't found a copy of that yet. So all I have is just the English translation. But it's interesting because the English translation is not a translation of the entire book, nor is it a translation of each of the patterns in their entirety. It's actually much more of a kind of like recipe. So here's one of the shawls, and you can see the basic shape of the shawl. That's what she'll give you with the number of decreases, etc., etc. But then you have basically a recipe over here of how to interpret what you see on the page that's totally in Faroese, so that you can understand the charts and the different knitting techniques or terminologies that are used by the original designers. So it's much more of a kind of like, it really does need the original, I think, to be totally effective. But it's also a really cool book in its own right because it spends a little bit of time talking about the history of the Faroe Islands and knitting traditions there. And there are some really interesting things about these shawls, one of which is that they were lined. Many of them were lined. So you can imagine knitting a beautiful shawl and lace, and these were fine, fine shawls. Like the Shetland tradition, they were supposed to be fine enough that you could pull them through a gold wedding band, but some of them weren't going to work that way because they were made out of different kinds of materials, different weights or grifts of yarn, and they were often made from homespun, as you might expect. But one of the cool things is that they were lined. So a lined shawl, if you've ever thought about lining a mitten or a hat or any other accessory, you know that you're lining, especially if you're lining something that was made out of lace, would need to have some extra stitches added in so that it's not going to pucker up the fabric once you attach it. So that's one of the things that they talk about in the preface and the introduction is, if you're going to go with lining, here are some basic principles or recipes for how to do that so that you don't mess up the shawl. What I'd like to read to you is this beautiful foreword. I think it was a poem written originally in Faroese by Elsa. It's called The Knitted Shawl, and it gives you a good sense of what shawls were used for. Like, they were very useful garments, like things that people, it's not just a decorative thing. Like, we often think of shawls, or I do, as something that you put on, you know, if it's cold in winter, you know, you wrap it around your neck to go outside, to go for a walk or whatever. But These shawls were really like pieces of clothing that were very necessary for survival. So let me read you a little bit from this knitted shawl. A triangular piece of clothing sloping around the shoulders. Find a Faroese woman and you have found one. When it happens that one's arms are chilly, it can be wrapped around one's head, shoulders, and bosom. It is often worn for fine occasions, but it can be worn for work and wet conditions too, however else it appears to you. Thank you, Millie. It is an everyday garment first and foremost. It is lovely, made from handspun, natural colored wool. We think it's warm and attractive from fine yarn and agile hands. It is knitted in rows of garter stitch and often is of one color, with the wrong side worked just as nicely as the right side. At the side are gussets, and at the middle, uncomplicated decreases run all the way up, and halfway up comes the shoulder shaping. And you can see that in the picture that I gave you for this shawl. You can see how the decreases happen here and then the shoulder shaping happens there, right? Protection and sturdy wear are certain when 3-ply wool is used, even better when it's made with a lining. If it's too big, made with too much yarn, it is too apt to stretch. The fringes are best suited for festive wear. Reports suggest that the most treasured shawls were made of fine yarn and could be drawn through a gold finger ring. Lace patterns are knitted in some. A pattern of diamonds was for a long time preferred. Fringes are now customarily desired, attached both by tying and by altering the knots. Triangular garment, Faroese made, 2 or 3 centuries have passed. No, we do not wish to lose you now. We want to keep you from decline. It's really a beautiful kind of, I think it captures what these shawls were really for. I mean, they were an everyday wear kind of garment, but they had some beautiful things built into them, some really nice design details. And one of the other things that they mentioned in the introduction is that they were meant to be tied behind so that they would stay out of your way if you're working. You don't want the ends of your shawl kind of flipping around and getting wet or getting in the mud or whatever it is that you're doing, the washing. So they were meant to be tied behind, and if you didn't have enough yarn or if yarn was too precious for your family, what you'd do is tie on some other cording to the ends of your shawl so that you could still tie it around your back and keep it out of your way. Really cool knitting tradition here. Let me show you at least one of the other shawls in here and give you a sense. This is these are some of the diamond patterns that they were mentioning as kind of very common and used in a lot of these shawls. And here's one with a kind of fringy, a little more of a waving kind of edge. And that is the Joanna, a medium large shawl. So there is a little bit of a bibliography in here for Faroese knitting. One of the reasons that I've been having this segment on here is so that if folks are interested in kind of following up or learning more, there are ways to do that. Even if you don't have the book, we can share information that the books have. So that bibliography might be really useful to some of you guys. And if you're looking for specific titles, let me know. I can send you the bibliographic information. So that is Faroese knitting patterns, the knitted shawls, the English accompaniment to the original Faroese book that came out from Schoolhouse Press. If I ever get my hands on that, I'll let you know. Millie's moving the mannequin around. And with that, I will end this segment of the rare and hard to find knitting and spinning books. So as I mentioned, one of the things that's been so hectic about the last couple weeks, besides moving, has been travel. So I had to go give a paper in Montreal at a workshop there on critical neuroscience, which was really fun. But in going, I only went for 3 days. So I flew in on a Monday, had my talk on Tuesday and flew out on Wednesday, so there wasn't a lot of time. And it turns out Montreal is like amazing in terms of knitting shops. So I only got to visit one, and there were at least 2 or 3 other ones that I really wanted to get to. And there were a couple people I wanted to meet up with that we didn't get a chance to meet up with because our timing wasn't right. I had to go in the morning to catch the plane in the afternoon. Anyway, next time I'd love to see you all. So I went over to Espace Tricot, and this is Melissa and Lisa, and they have an excellent podcast on YouTube that many of you are probably really familiar with by the same name. And they're really fun and funny ladies. I was so hoping to meet them, but as I said, when I went over, it was kind of like a last minute, I'm on the way to the plane kind of a thing. And they weren't there, but they had tons of people working because they were just having their huge 20% off sale, both online and in the store. So when you walked into the store, which is a gorgeous space, it's like a really beautiful lighting. They've got a lot of windows coming in. They have shelving. They have tables for work. They have really cute knickknacks and books and all kinds of fun stuff. But it was also full of packages and people sorting and fulfilling orders. So it was a little bit of a madhouse in there, and everyone was really polite if tired and kind of like talking about their aching backs a little bit. So it was a cool experience to get in there and actually see the shop. And you guys know that when I travel, I like to try to find local yarns as much as possible. So, and I know my stash definitely doesn't need any enhancement, as you'll see when you see the yarn room in a couple episodes. But no matter, when has that ever daunted any of us, right? So I found some cool Canadian yarn. This one, and many of you will be familiar with this. This is Lichen and Lace, and this is the Rustic Heather Sport, and they are a Canadian yarn company, and these I just got because I wanted to get 3 kind of a gradient grayish kind of scheme here. I guess it would be better to gradient wise to see it that way. So I think I'm gonna knit up a hat and some mittens out of this is my hope. But that's one thing. And then the other thing is they have their own brand of yarn there. It's called Knitting It Up at Espace Tricot. And I picked up the Such Great Heights colorway, and this is superwash merino, 75%, 50% cashmere, and 10% silk. So it's a single, and it will be perfect for a shawl. I absolutely love this colorway. It's got this kind of light blue going on with some kind of rusty oranges and yellows in there. So I think shawl material, definitely. And it was a great shop, and what I'm going to do is throw some pictures in here. Probably as I was talking to you, you'll have seen some pictures of the shop. They had some gorgeous yarn and some other local Canadian dyers like Julie Asselin. They had a lot of her yarn there, and just some other really gorgeous stuff. So I'll put some photos up in here so that you can have a little tour of the yarn shop with me. It was a great experience, and if I ever get to go back to Montreal, I definitely want to visit some of the other yarn shops, and maybe next time run into Melissa and Lisa. But anyway, Melissa and Lisa, this is my chance to say hello to you and thank you for a lovely visit. I hope all went well with your online ordering with your big sale, and that no one completely pulled their back out lifting too much yarn. All right, let's do giveaway, and then we can do a little farm chatter for anyone who still wants to stick around for that. So, as I mentioned last time, I have some beautiful bats to give away from Summer Snyder of Dancing Skies Fiber Arts, and this is just one of them. This is a beautiful merino bamboo Firestar bat. She also sent this gorgeous one, which is merino silk and Angelina, and last but certainly not least, this gorgeous beauty with merino bamboo and silk waist. And I pulled one of them out last time to show you guys because it was just so darn pretty. And I think you can really just start to see some of those beautiful fibers in there. Gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. So what I asked you guys to do is head over to her shop, check out what she was offering, and tell me your favorite colorway. And so many of you had great choices, so thank you for participating. If you didn't win this time, I always have other giveaways, and so good luck next time. Okay, our winners, I picked 3 winners. Let me pull up the computer. So we did random number generator, and I have 3 winners. The first is Angela Davis, who is on YouTube, and everybody's been notified. So please send me an email to claim your prize within a week, and I will be glad to get this out to you. My email is knittingthestash@gmail.com, and I'll put that on the screen here too. So Angela Davis on YouTube wins one of the bats. Julie, who's Julianne2 on Ravelry, wins one of the bats. And Noreen Kellett, who is also on YouTube, you've won one of the bats. So congratulations to Angela, Julie, and Noreen. I've gotten in touch with you, like I said, so please email me to claim your prizes. I can't wait to send these bats out and see you guys spin them up. I bet you'll do some beautiful things with them. So that's our giveaway for this week. And a huge thank you to Summer for sponsoring that and sending along the beautiful bats. She does have, I think she's just done another shop update, so if you saw something that you like, head on over and pick it up now. Her stuff tends to sell out pretty quickly because it's so popular, and she's she's pretty prolific, so it's okay because that shop keeps getting restocked. All right, that's it for knitting and spinning type stuff, and I will take a few minutes now to talk to you guys about the farm for those of you who are interested. So we moved out here, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago now. It's hard to tell because my brain is fried. And it's about 5 acres. Behind me there's about a ½ acre that's chain link fenced for the dogs. The people who lived here before us had 2 big huskies, so we know the fence has been tested and is gonna hold up for them, because I met their huskies and their huskies were adorable but really, really big. So we have ½ an acre that's fenced for the dogs. Spencer has a big workshop, which is, if you're interested, you can check out Meta Spencer on YouTube, and he's starting to talk about how he's organizing things. But he has a 2-car plus workshop garage that's all insulated, and so he'll have heat and cool and lots of indoor space to work. And he also has an RV garage over there for the bus. Yes, he's working on a prison bus still, which many of you guys know about. So we have that going on. And then out back beyond me, and I think you could see this last time, I'll try to turn the camera a little bit, there's a barn right out there, and it used to be a horse barn. So the people who lived here before us, and before us, and before us, apparently had a bunch of different horses, and we learned from Lynn, the neighbor, that there have been a few different iterations of folks coming through and changing things up, and but at least 2 of them had horses and really fixed up the barn. One put the barn in, and then the next one, 20 years later, fixed up the barn. So it has 3 horse stalls in it, and we think it could be retrofitted pretty easily for sheep. And Kathy and I have been talking a little bit about sheep. I just need to travel a little bit less. We'd also like to get some chickens, and try to do like a full-on homestead, like have chickens and sheep. We have a big garden out there that I showed you last time. Spencer wants to put in a root cellar. He's got his workshop, so just like really do it up out here. That's kind of the plan. It's going to take us a little bit of time. The back pasture is, I think, 2½ acres, and Kathy said, yes, I've already talked to her. She said maybe 5 sheep would be good for that kind of size. And I'm not that interested in doing lambing and all that kind of stuff at first. I would just like to have the sheep. But Spencer's kind of into the lambing, so maybe we'll do both. I just don't know. But I really would love to have some sheep out there. Right now, the back pasture is a soccer field for Zach, and he is a high school soccer player, club soccer player, loves soccer, and the back pasture is awesome because it's completely mowed and cleared, and pretty flat, and it's fenced on 3 of the 4 sides. So this side over here is missing. It has an old kind of crumbly fence, and we're going to go through and patch that up and add a new fence, and then it'll be all open and good for sheep and dogs and chickens and everything else. So that's the plan. I would love, love, love to host some workshops out here once we get some of the spaces redesigned and cleaned out and whatnot. So the barn, I think, would be a great place to host some events, and Spencer's talked about that too, so that could be a possibility going forward. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that kind of stuff. Maybe Central Illinois isn't like a go-to destination, but we're pretty close to Chicago and not that long of a drive. So it could be a good place to kind of congregate and have some fun stuff going on. Maybe some workshops, some lessons, some teaching, some gatherings, things like that. So that's the farm. We're pretty excited about it. And like I said, it's so new to us right now. We're just trying to unpack still and get fences fixed and move into workshops and get organized. So it will be an ongoing kind of process, and I will, I'm sure, keep you guys updated on things. And I know Spencer will over on his channel. So yeah, welcome to the farm once again. And we're very happy to have you guys out here with us and to share all of these new adventures with you. So yeah, more next time, and I think the podcast is back to regular, so I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, take care, happy knitting, and congratulations on the giveaway winners, and thank you so much to Summer Snyder and to Albina of LB Handknits for some beautiful knit and spin show and tell. All right, take care, everybody, bye.
Hey, Millie, look here. Do you guys want to go outside? You guys want to go outside?